Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the fourth talk in the Only One Theme talk series, Wave 4. Today's topic is only articulating value proposition in technology marketing, and our esteemed speaker for today is Mr. Sundar Nagarajan, fondly called SN. Let me briefly introduce SN before we begin the talk. SN is the Managing Director of Innovation Scale Advisors, ISA, which is an enterprise development firm that helps innovation-driven enterprises grow business outcomes. ISA's clients are digital businesses, enterprises in digital transformation, deep tech startups, even incubators and investors. SN is an accomplished senior technologist with over 3 decades of experience in large global enterprises, namely Wipro, Philips, HP, NetApp, and a few early stage companies. He's also an author of the book titled This Book is Not for Edison, which is aimed towards first time technologist entrepreneurs. With this very brief introduction, SN, welcoming you to the session and handing over the session to you.
Thank you, Mugdha, and thank you everyone who has joined. Good evening. Before I jump into the topic, let me ask you, how many of you here are already in technology marketing function? Anybody here who's already doing that as a regular function?
They can put it in the chat box.
Yeah, just put it in the chat box.
SN's question is, how many of you are in the technology marketing?
Yeah, already doing technology marketing function.
So SN, as you're aware, our entire team is into that. And of course,
I'm not asking the venture center
few more
team.
responses are coming up.
I'm asking the people outside, the venture center team. Okay. I can see a few responses. But how many of you are entrepreneurs? How many of you are running your own startups? Just say yes or put a thumbs up, or that's also fine.
This in the audience is a mix of entrepreneurs, researchers, students, teachers who are interested. It will be a mix.
Yeah, that was my next question. How many of you are researchers and academicians? Just post what you are doing briefly into the chat. It will help me to know you as the session progresses. Yeah, thank you. So let us get started. As the topic today is somewhat rich and somewhat abstract, not very easy to explain. So let us try to get started, and please feel free to interrupt me through the program. You don't have to wait for the end to ask your questions. If you have questions, you can also post it in the Q&A. Is there a separate Q&A channel, or they post it in the chat itself?
Yeah, they will post it in the chat and I will be moderating it.
Yeah, so just post if you have any questions, and we will answer it at the correct time. Or if you already want to interrupt me and ask me the question as we are progressing, feel free to do that. Okay. Okay, let's get started. First, let's talk a little bit about the context. We use all these terms, technology, solution, product, service, all these kind of terms very loosely. So sometimes it's a good idea to go to the fundamentals and get some of that clear. Okay. And here is a simple 2x2 matrix, which talks about the various kinds of research and development that happens. So on the x-axis of this chart is the immediacy of the application need. That is there a market waiting for this product, or waiting for the solution, or waiting for this technology. Right now, let me use all the terms, right? That's immediacy of the need. That's on the x-axis. And the y-axis is there a quest for fundamental understanding? Is there a need for basic research to solve this problem? Or is there a somewhat deeper technical work needed before this particular problem can be solved? Right? That's y-axis. So when both are high is what we call the deep tech research. Yeah, deep tech businesses or deep tech research. So here we also call it Pasture Quadrant. It is based on a book called Pasture Quadrant. It's a very nice old book which talks about early stage companies and innovations. It's a nice book to read. So they classify this into these three quadrants: Pasteur quadrant, Edison quadrant, and Bohr quadrant. So what it essentially means here is, why Pasteur quadrant? It's because Pasteur's inventor of vaccines. So vaccines are the best examples where the need is right there. You know there is a disease, you know there is a pandemic, and there is a way of solving that problem is something people look for, right? So those are solutions which are not obvious or evident. They will require many generations of probably research on it and domain knowledge, and then develop the solution finally, right? So those are truly the so-called deep techs. Okay. Now, if it is only a fundamental research and you don't necessarily know what its application is the Bohr quadrant. Typically, what comes out of the TRL levels 2 to 4 is in that quadrant. So you have a solution. Probably you know many applications for it, or you know no applications for it. It's perfectly fine. Yeah. And you can show the particular idea working in the lab. It solves definitely a deep technical problem. And that is why it's a research topic. So that's called the Bohr quadrant. There is probably no immediate commercial value for that. Yeah. And then we have most of the other R&D, which is the applied research, which is most of the time technology inspired. See, why it's called Edison quadrant is because Edison's inventions were highly influenced by the invention of electricity. So it was a fundamental technology that got developed around the time of his inventions. And then there were decades of continuous innovations and continuous products that were built using electricity or electrical technology. In similar terms, we can say today we are in the generative AI season, where generative AI is a newly found technology which is enabling a lot of applications, and it is transforming the whole industry, right? So it comes out of a fundamental innovation, and it is trying to apply the newly found technology into a problem that probably already is being solved in a less efficient way, or something that was not solvable before, right? Many inventions that came after electricity were not possible before, like whether it's a radio or a television or whatever, right? So that's the broad idea here. And whenever we use the term technology, we mean things in the TRL 2 to 4 quadrant. That is, these are fundamental inventions that have come out of lab work, and or it could be industrial lab or academic lab, and it is an application. So it transitions to either the deep tech quadrant, or it transitions into the Edison quadrant, depending on what is the level of invention that is. So this is the first concept I wanted to introduce. Now look at how these become commercial startups. So you have a technical idea, and unless it is becoming a commercial startup and it becomes a new venture which is creating economics, it is not going to have any economic value. So there we can see there are different terms we can use. At the lowest level or the innermost level, the core level, is the philosophy of the science behind what we are doing. And from that, we define what is called a technology, a capability. A technology is essentially a new capability that didn't exist before. Then they are either becoming a new way of doing something, a new process, or a new way of doing something, or they are a component, or they are a platform. These are various terms people use. They are not consumable directly. That is the fundamental aspect of a technology. The technology is a piece of activity, a solution to a problem, which has to have a context or an environment in which it fits in. Then you have products. Products are physical products that customers can consume. So products are consumable by a customer, and experience is what the product delivers. It's an experience. That is what is broadly also understood as service. When we say software as a service or SaaS, it means you are created a software product which is delivered as an experience. Like this experience you are going through of using Zoom to listen to someone speaking on a topic and interacting with that individual. This is an experience enabled by many, many products behind it. Right? Then it's an integration of several products. So the product or service, which is what the consumer finally consumes and pays for, and then the technology is what is powering it. And it is easily conceivable that a technology could have many applications. It could go into many products, it could go into empower many services and so on. Okay. So whenever we talk about technology risk or deep tech problems, we are talking about, can we build it? That's the basic question. Okay. Whereas when we are talking about market risk, we are talking about will somebody need it? Will somebody buy it? Will someone pay for it? Can we execute it at scale? No, these are all the questions that we ask when the technology is into a product or a service as it is delivered. Now, deep tech businesses in general have a long gestation period and somewhat unpredictable too. So that's a challenge there. So I hope this is clear. Any questions on this? Maybe we'll pause for a minute. We talked about some of the basic ideas here. This will apply to anything that you're working on. If it is not, maybe I would like to know. Any questions? No questions? Okay, let's go forward.
Not right now.
Now, why do we need a value proposition? Because nobody can consume a technology as it is. Because it's typically taking birth in a lab with some scientists and experts. And the language and the jargon they use is not what the common people use. So there has to be some way of translating that technical finding or technical invention into a way that somebody understands. So without that, you cannot build a business model. You cannot build consumption. And when there is no consumption, there is no business either. So here are certain terms that we use in our conversation. Say, for example, the term business model. So in simple terms, business model is how does a particular enterprise make money? So you have converted the technology into a product or a service, and that is hosted in an organization. This organization is a bunch of people who serve people. That's what any organization is all about. Okay. And that organization has to have a business model. The business model is how the organization makes money and how the organization sustains itself for the long term. So that's the term we use as business model. And the term product market fit is now by now many of you would have heard it many times. It's a popular jargon in the startup world. The idea of product market fit is whatever you have developed as a value proposition, you have communicated as a value proposition is actually realized. That means the company or the organization that makes that value is able to realize the value that it expects to get from the market. And the market is happy consuming it. That is when you have a product market fit. Then, what are the advantages of writing a value proposition document? One, it makes it accountable, that it makes it clear how the return on investment will come, whether it can be quantified, measurable, all of that, right? Whether it is comparable to an existing solution uh, or it's something new, right? And whether it is demonstrable. Is it something that I can show you how it works? And is it something that I can experience? Now, in the value propositions, there are again multiple terms that people use. A unique value proposition is something that is unique only to the particular organization or the product or the system. Usually, this is an intellectual property. It's usually patented, and the only organization that has it is that particular organization. Yeah. So that is when it is unique. So unique intellectual property or unique technology are generally rare and highly valuable. Most of the companies which are highly valued in the industry uh, are practically monopolies. There's no second source for that particular value they're giving. Okay, there are many such examples we can give. Say, for example, Google for search. You're very familiar with that. For a long time, Google has been the monopoly in that area. Now they are losing that monopoly, and there are alternatives coming. But by and large, there's a practical example we are all using on a daily basis, or products like Coca-Cola or businesses like who make semiconductor equipment for making semiconductor factory line manufacturing lines. Like these are very intricate, deep technology products which there are no second sources in the world, right? So these are the unique products, and it is very hard to have unique value propositions. It is generally not easy for any startup to do that unless they have come out of a lab with a deep research backing that particular startup before. Yeah. The next stage is what is called the differentiated value proposition. So differentiated value proposition is where it is not unique. There are alternatives. There are alternative ways of doing it, but I am able to somehow differentiate it from others, which is what most of the cases are. Most of the products that you use, most of the services you use are differentiated, not necessarily unique. They're not monopolies, right? And value is what the customer really cares about. So today we'll be spending more time understanding that. How do customer understand and consume value. And what is this concept of economic value? Yeah. So we'll go into some more deep discussions on that. So it's actually a conceptual difference between perceived benefits and cost. Cost of doing a solution is most of the time very clear. So you know certain manufacturing process it goes through and creates a product, and its raw materials are known, labor is known, its transportation costs are known, supply chain is known. So you'll be able to calculate the cost of the product. But its value is an opinion. It's an opinion that the customer is willing to pay for it. And that value the customer is paying is something that they will remember long after the product is sold. Whatever price they paid, they're going to forget that. But still, the value they will always remember. So that is the concept of value. Right? Now, so a value proposition makes customers choose your technology or your product or service over alternatives. So when we talk about technology marketing, it's very important to understand that we are talking about the TRL4, TRL2 to TRL4 level of technology, which is essentially to be marketed to an entrepreneur. And the inventors may choose to be the entrepreneurs themselves. So we will talk about that also. But assume that you're giving to somebody else. So for the technology, the entrepreneur is the customer. And the customer produces a product for which they have to find the real customer. That is the real application of that particular technology that is developed. Now, very often I have seen in the industry, there is lack of clarity in doing this. So people who have PhDs and who have worked very deeply into, say, let's say an example of battery technology. Okay, they have invented some new technology, new way of creating batteries, right? So they start a battery company, hoping that their technology can be made into a product, right? And without clear understanding of the market for batteries, they now suddenly face a problem that, okay, I have a customer need. Somebody is asking for batteries for using in material transport vehicles. Okay, so maybe that's what I will optimize it for. Okay, because I'm not able to find any other customer. So they make batteries now for a customer who is making commercial vehicles for transportation. So that customer says, see, it's all fine, but you have to give me a vehicle. I can't consume a battery as it is. I would certainly willing to try your new batteries, but provided you give me a commercial vehicle. So the company decides to also make commercial vehicles. Now, see that the original startup, which was supposed to be doing R&D on battery technology and creating batteries, have now become an automotive company. It has now started a product business, which is selling commercial transport vehicles. The minute you start doing commercial transport vehicles as a product, the manufacturing lines are different, the way it is sold is different, the customers are different. Then they suddenly discover a new need. Most of the customers are saying, you know what, we don't want to really buy your vehicles. All that we want is to use them. So can you lease it to them? Can you rent it to us? So then they decided, okay, we'll also do a leasing business or a renting business, which is a totally different business again. You're entering into finance domain. Yeah. So starting as a PhD in chemistry and doing a battery technology, finally landing up in a leasing vehicle business is not a good evolution for a technology company. And ultimately everything collapses because all of these require different kind of capital needs, different kind of marketing, different kind of customer service, different customer base, and so on. So it's very, very important for the inventors to understand what do they want to do. Do they want to stay as inventors and continue inventing? If that is the case, they may find a good entrepreneur to transfer the technology to, and then let them build the company and business, whereas they continue to invent new areas in that particular technology they're working in, right? Or they decide to do a product, in which case they have to choose which is the best product to do, and that we can go to market with clarity. So there's a lot of commercial thinking that is required before we can really take these to the market. So what I'm talking about here in this session today is how do you prepare for technology marketing? So this applies to both cases. This applies to the case where you are doing research and technology building, and then you are deciding to transfer it to somebody else, or you decide to go and build it yourself. Even in that case, then you are yourself the entrepreneur, and you have to then know the end customer too, as to who is the end customer you are serving it. Even in the first case, when you are giving to an entrepreneur, the entrepreneur is going to ask you, who needs this and what's the application for that. So knowing the customer's customer, knowing the application and its customer is also equally important for you to be successful in marketing this. And essentially, the marketing activity has to give you, at the end of it, a sales result. So what do you do in marketing? Marketing is to let people know that you have something to offer. You have something of value for people to offer, get. So you are making that known to people and making it easy for people to consume, right? And then as a result, you get leads coming towards you. And then the leads are converted into deals. This is typically a sales process completes, right? So today our focus is on the marketing side. How do we make this known to people? How do we communicate this to people who are interested in our technology? So the economic value of any technology is established only when a product market fit is achieved. The product market fit is achieved outside the lab. It is outside in the real industrial environment. So let me pause again. Any questions? By now, I think you should have several questions because we have covered a lot of topics.
Excellent. I think the format is such that we can finish it and then have questions. So maybe we should continue.
We should do that? Okay.
Yeah,
We'll
because
do
we're
that.
going to also record it. So it's, yeah, please.
Okay, I'll continue then.
Yeah.
Just hold your questions or type them into the chat.
Yeah.
Okay, so now let's get into the essentials of technology marketing. So the question about should you start a startup or should you license out the technology? Okay, so that question is also part of this, right? So let me take that question first and then get into the other tools and techniques that goes after this. The important point to realize as any entrepreneur is whether the individual is a researcher and a technologist or they are willing to change their domain a little bit and learn how to do business, understand business models, and have a team of people working with them who come with different discipline in terms of their experience. So the individual's ability to work with people who are coming from sales, marketing, or finance, or operations, or manufacturing, and other functions, how well they can work with them. This is an important consideration, right? So the question to be answered is like this: if you are charged more by the very fact of working in a particular area like battery technology development, and you're a chemist and that's what you know best, okay, and you would like to go deeper into that, it may be a better idea for you to continue in that domain, learn a little bit of commercial activities and commercial acumen you develop, but you don't jump into doing a full startup or a very scalable business and raising funding for a large operations and so on. That may not be your cup of tea. But if you want to do that and you want to experience it, it may be a good idea to become first a co-founder. Become a co-founder with someone else who is willing to take the major risk of building the business, and then you are able to contribute to that. So starting as a CTO or a co-founder may be a good way of learning about startups. If you are very confident to do it and you are willing to take the trouble of going through it, by all means, but there are very few examples of people who are both deep researchers and also very successful entrepreneurs. Most of them are people who are able to convert from a technology into a product. And when the product is proven in the market, in the field, they generally exit the industry or exit the particular business by selling it to larger companies and make their money and go back to research or build the next technology that they would like to. So that is typically the patterns that are seen working very well in the industry. There are exceptions to everything, but very, very predominant the success fact, if you notice in the market, researchers generally become very good CTOs, or they go all the way up to building the idea into a product and achieve a product market fit, and also probably a business model fit. And then around that time, they find a good buyer for the product in the market, and the entire business they sell and go back to research. That's typically what works most of the time. Okay, now what are the transactable assets in a technology research? That's the first question we're trying to understand. So this is very important for academicians to understand. So people who are doing PhD level research or as a student or even academicians who guide PhD level research and create basic technologies out of it, which potentially have industrial applications. One of the mistakes they do very often is to not understand the market or the real business need. So as a result, the work they are doing may be technically very advanced, but it may not have a real market application. So this is one of the mistakes that often happens. But even in cases where there is very good application in the market for what they are doing, either at that point of time or later, the issue that most of the time that is observed is how do you package the technology? So packaging the technology essentially means the students who worked with you are not going to be there forever. They're going to move on, right? So how do you capture that know-how so that the next set of students are able to take it forward from there and take it forward? Or if any entrepreneur is interested in the technology, how will you enable them to make it actually work in their industrial environment? So that's basically the most important thing to understand here as to what are the transactable assets. So starting with the know-how, know-how is typically what is covered in patents. Okay, or you can choose to make it trade secrets, but there should be very clear process of keeping it a trade secret. Otherwise, these can be very easily copied by others, right? And the value is immediately lost. So you have a patent protection or keep them as trade secrets because academicians also like to publish, and publications are an important metric in their career growth. It's also important to know that you can publish after patenting in many cases. So you should consult a patent lawyer or a person knowledgeable about intellectual property protection to discover how much you can publish and what is the right way to publish. Okay, these are very specific to the context in which you are operating, and therefore it's good to get some guidance on that. Right now, prototypes and simulations, they are very, very important. Very often, a patent is not useful to create the product, even though that is the intent of a patent. The patent should be enough for a person knowledgeable about the subject matter to create the product. But practically speaking, it is very often not the case. And that too, when the patent was taken or the invention was taken a few years ago, and the people who have worked on the particular invention is no longer there. Okay, so creating a prototype and a simulation and how you recreate it, how can you repeat that? It's very, very important to do that and apply for patents. They're very, very important protections that you should get. And there's again specific programs from Venture Center that you will see on patenting. So understand that if you don't know it enough, and you have to have patents. Then the various data that goes with the experiment. These are again important to archive. These may be data collected from the field, or these may be data that you created for simulations, whatever is the case, and any kind of sample collections that you did. And also very important is capability training programs. That is, if you have people to know certain specific know-how, which requires certain background information in science, you have to have those capability training programs too. So create all of these. This is together is what is a technology package that you can market to somebody, which you transfer to an industrial environment. And the first step in doing this is the market opportunity navigation. We are going to have another session, follow-up session, which will be a full session on Market Opportunity Navigator. So today I will only give you an overview of how this works. And this is applicable at the TRL level 4. That's the right place to apply Market Opportunity Navigation. So TRL level 4, for those who don't know what it is that the prototype is working in the lab. I have demonstrated a technology and it's working in the lab and it can now be taken to market. That is the stage at which I am. So one of the first things I have to determine is where to apply this. Take the example of electricity that we talked about earlier. Electricity can be applied to many things. It's a very fundamental technology. It created a huge amount of new applications. But even other technologies that you build, we will take an example and elaborate it in the detailed session next time when I do that. But there are many technologies which have multiple applications. Let us take the example of pressure cookers, right? So it is actually 17th century invention by a physicist to cook food using steam under pressure by raising the boiling temperature of water. That is, water generally boils at 100 degrees centigrade and vaporizes. by creating a pressurized environment, you can raise the temperature up to 120, 130, 140, and using that to cook materials, because it will decompose, say, proteins and other things better because of the higher thermal energy. And it has many, many applications. One application is to cook food at home, the home pressure cooker. But you can also use it for decomposing waste. You can use the same technology for industrial applications where you want to decompose, say, proteins for whatever reason, right? So there can be many applications for that basic technology. So which one will you pursue first? So as I said, first you protect it and then you start the licensing approach. Is that a valid approach to take, right? And should you monetize the invention yourself or should you partner with somebody? That question also you answer, right? So the first thing to understand here is technology means is a new capability. It's a solution to a problem. Most often it's a solution in search of a problem. Okay, somebody has to pay for that, right? So discover all possible applications of the technology and who needs with it. So in the value proposition design, one of the fundamentals we are to keep in mind always is that it's about a human being. All solutions are consumed by human beings. Okay, even if you say that this is an industrial solution, that industrial solution is actually chosen by a human being in that industrial enterprise. Right? So always think of the human who is actually needing that. Right? And how attractive is the economic potential of that market? Say, like in the steam example, if I make home cookers, what is the cost of that versus I apply to medical applications? For example, for sterilizing equipment for dentists or hospitals, there can be many such applications. So you can think of where should I first focus, which will give me the best market potential. As you can imagine, selling such a solution into a hospital or a sterilization requirement is far easier than selling it to a home consumer who is trying to adopt a technology they're not familiar with. They may be afraid that the cooker will burst, all those kind of issues. So you have to look where the opportunity is big and also where the opportunity is easy. So the trade-off between how easy or difficult it is to sell, right? That defines your market space. Once you have defined the market space, you can also now design, are there overlaps in the market? There is, when I'm selling something to one customer, say hospitals, doctors, can I also create a different variation of this for the same customers? So the product is slightly different, but the customer is the same, right? So I can create a product that helps sterilizing equipment, or I can create another product which may be useful for some other application, but within the hospital. So that is the overlap that you're creating on customer side, or the overlap that you're creating on the market side, or the product side. Right? Can I sell the same product to multiple customers? If I create a home cooker, perhaps you can also sell it to restaurants. So there's another market that I can sell to, which is a B2B market compared to a B2C market. So I can probably sell the same cooker to a restaurant or a home. So there the product overlap is high, right? Restaurants may want a larger cooker, whereas home may want a smaller cooker. So that's how you classify that. Which market will you choose to pursue first? So ideally, you should choose the market which is most attractive, the largest size, and the largest profitability potential with the least amount of challenges. So you can systematically assess this. Take each application and systematically assess what is the market potential in terms of profits as well as in terms of profits in the sense profitability. There's the cost to price variation. How much can that be? Okay. Say, for example, the example of hospitals. The hospitals are willing to pay a higher premium for safety. So you may get a larger profitability there. Whereas homes may not be willing to do a higher priced product just because it is giving them some advantage. So it may be harder to sell at a higher profitability. There, the volume may be higher. Yeah? So these kind of considerations are taken. Then what would you keep as your backup and what would you keep as your growth option? Sorry, I have a throat issue. So what's the difference between a growth option and a backup option? Growth option is what you will use when the first choice succeeds. That is, for example, I could sell first to hospitals and it is successful there, then I may sell to dentists, or I may choose another kind of market. So it's a growth option. Whereas backup option is, what will I do if the first option fails? The first choice fails. So the market that I attempted first is unlikely to succeed. Where will I go? Now, this is the overall planning that you do in market opportunity navigation. And when you are deciding to do technology marketing, there you are not really deciding which business to get in. You have many applications possible. So you create what is called a technology brief or tech brief. So this is the most important document that you have to create for if you are doing a technology transfer to a different buyer who is likely to take it to the market. So the important thing to understand here is it is not a specification sheet. It is a translator. It must capture the technology innovation, but it should talk more about potential applications. What is its value for customers? Which customers? Where will you position? What is the competitive advantage? Talk about those kind of things. Sorry. And these are the other sections that you will have in the technology brief. So we will see a little bit more about it, how to create the executive summary, how to articulate, etc. as we go forward. And it is extremely important to talk about your readiness level, at what point it is, and also what kind of patent coverage you have for the particular technology. Another important point to understand here is the concept called jobs to be done. Very broadly, we know about market needs. So jobs to be done is a concept which makes it a little bit more nuanced than just saying needs. So many of you would already know the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is essentially what drives people to buy. So they have physiological needs, safety needs, love, esteem, self-actualization, all these kind of different levels. And at the lowest level, it's material, functional needs, and higher levels are emotional, social needs. So an example I keep giving to people to make it easy to understand this is, if you want to know time, would you even buy a watch? Because you already know the time on your mobile phone. You may not even need a watch if you are only interested in functional. Now, if you're interested in a watch, will you buy a Titan watch or will you buy a Rolex watch? Or will you buy a Casio watch? There are many choices available to do the same function of letting you know your time. However, they come with other emotional and social uh, value around it, which is what it makes it valuable. So the number of people who look for self-actualization and esteem are generally low, and that's why products like Rolex have a smaller volume market, but they are highly profitable, right? On the other hand, people who are more interested in the functionality, they tend to buy the least priced product for the particular functionality. They're cost sensitive. So this is typically how it works. And we also talked about the customer's willingness to pay, and on the behind you is your supplier, your employee, all the costs that you have to pay. The value is something that is in between these two. That is, what is the price that you are able to get minus the cost. That is the economic value that is realized in the enterprise. So this is a simple way of understanding and quantifying what you are talking about as economic value. Now, to understand jobs to be done, let's look at this example of taking photos. So in the past, we used cameras. Now we are using mobile phones to do it. Because what people care about is they want to remember their moments, which they want to see later, right? So that's the whole concept of JTBD. So they only hire a service or a product. They're not really buying. At any point in time, a generation is hiring a product, and when there is an alternate, better alternative, they give that up. So always try to understand what is a JTBD, not just the functionality. Like knowing the time, right? That's not enough. You should know much deeper than that. And we will have a session on customer discovery following the market opportunity navigator. There, I will talk more about how to determine these better through customer interviews. So I will skip this slide because it's a little bit more detail about it. But just take these examples to understand the concept. People don't buy a Rolex watch to know the time, as I already said. And people don't want a quarter-inch drill, they want a quarter-inch hole. And why they want a quarter-inch hole? Because they want to hang a photo or whatever is the next step to that, right? So developing a value proposition, there are various ways to do this. So you start from the customer, the human being. That's very, very important. Who has the problem or who will benefit from the solution. Remember, we have a solution first when you are talking from technology side. But we have to now somehow create that match between the problem and the solution. We should be able to get that fit. Okay. So there are various ways to do customer discoveries and designing. So we'll not go into that now. But this is the first step. And always remember the customer is a human being. And be willing to try out, experiment, observe, and learn. And you have to profile the customer and do what is called a capital optimization approach. That's the essence of lean startups. But for deep techs, it is much harder because you may need a lot more capital before you can actually realize revenue. But this is the important aspect of this phase, that you optimize your capital to make a product that can be production deployable. That's very important. Okay, so that's your final point. Now, in this phase of talking to customers and discovering and creating a product or a service, you are no longer in just the technology world. You have moved from the technology world into creating the environment and the context around the technology so that it is consumable. So typical patterns of value propositions are: I will help you make money, I will help you save money, or I will take you out of trouble. Right? These are the typical value propositions of any product that you know. So when you are developing a product or solution, also think about, is it matching into one of these, or there are many other patterns also. I will take you out of trouble, I will entertain you, or will make you happy and peaceful, whatever it is. All these are essentially pointing to the JTBD of the customer, what the customer's jobs to be done is. So value proposition canvas is one of the important tools that we use in articulating value. And remember, this is for a particular product or a service. You will create as many value proposition canvases as applications are there. So you have to independently create them. This is not for a technology. This is for a set of products or services. Now, what is called here as products or services, this is, I'm showing the original value proposition canvas. This is within the scope of the technology or the product that you have picked up. What are the features or the capabilities that you will bring here? Okay. And these are the customer's JTBD that you are trying to solve. So that is the right-hand side. Is the customer side. Customer's JTBD is here. And from the customer's JTBD, you discover what are the customer's pains. So the jargon they use in most of the literature is hair on fire problems. That is, the customer wants to solve it now. Okay, that's what is important to them. Okay, so discover those pains and create a match between your technology and how the pain will be relieved through your solution. Are there gains that come as a side benefit, right, as a result of this? Okay, and what are those gains? So this is the cycle. So typically you can use it in a clockwise manner first. So you start with the customer jobs, then to try to quantify them, and then try to come to the pain relievers and gain creators and gains. But once you have set it up, this can be dynamically changed. There is no particular order. And this is a good tool to use it among your team members as well. And the best way to do this may be you can paste it on a wall in a big format and everybody can put a yellow sticky on it. That may be one way to do it. The other way to do is to have an electronic way where you have it as a form on the online system and everybody can see it and contribute to it and so on, right? And you are making a lot of assumptions while designing this. This is very, very important, and these are to be validated as you go forward. And most of these assumptions, you have to choose which assumption has to be a correct one for the business to work. Okay. And as I told you, this is about a product or a service. So you have to say this particular problem that I'm trying to solve, right? If the problem doesn't exist, then the solution is not going to be valuable. is very important. So here there's an example just for you to refer to. You'll get the slides from the session so that you can use it. You can refer to the particular product here. It is a book reader for the visually impaired people, right? So the book can be kept on this like this, and it will scan it and it reads loud for the user. That is the idea. So it can read paper documents, books, magazines, etc. So this is the product. Yeah. And the essential technologies here are the optical character recognition and conversion of text to voice. All those kind of technologies are the essential technologies playing the playing behind the product. So if you do the mapping here, what are the customers' JTBD? If you notice here, the customer profile is visually impaired with substantial need to read from paper and books. Students, researchers, professionals like lawyers, for example, literature enthusiasts. This is the type of customers. First, you have to have a customer profile and try to imagine the human being who is behind this. And their need is understand, comprehend printed materials such as books or documents, and they want to progress in their life. That is the ultimate goal. And they want to enjoy the literature they're reading, if that's their goal is. Now, if there are other ways to satisfy these, your solution will not work anymore. So that's what is important to understand. So if there is a better way of doing than the you read, okay, so they will obviously choose the better way. And what are the pains here? Most printed materials are not available in the braille form. Okay, so here you can read it from regular text. Okay, that's the most important pain. So it can read out books, that's a solution. And it talks about the product benefits. Note it's benefits that we are talking about. We're not talking about features. We're talking about specially crafted for user interface to support visually impaired. Physical device to handle paper or bound books, like that. These are the capabilities the product has. Yeah. And connectivity is not essential. Therefore, it is applicable in villages, etc., where there may not be reliable connectivity. And there are also gain creators. It can also work as a scanner, and thereby you storing the document and so on. So this just to quickly give you an idea of how the canvas works. And this is very, very important to understand. How you articulate your technology or your value is through a promise or an offering. Okay, that is at the surface, right? And you have to have your delivery capability behind it, and your value proposition is at the core. Okay, and the customer is buying your product basically for satisfying their JTBD. So customer success is very important and is beyond customer experience. This is why many products are initially adopted heavily in the market and then the adoption goes down. It's because the initial customer experience helps adoption. But continued usage will happen only if the customer success happens. If the customer is able to achieve the goals that they have as their JTBD. So it's very important to realize that this is very essential aspect of deployment. Once a product is deployed, you have to follow through and see the customer is really successful or not. And there's a time lag between customer experience and customers' final success. Now, this is a little bit lighter video that talks about a technologist talking about a solution, and that's not the right way to do it. So I'm not going to play it today. We'll just skip it. In the interest of time and letting you ask more questions, you are going to get this anyway, and it's available on the internet. So these are some of the templates or tricks that you can use in articulating your value. So your product or your company or whatever is that is the only product or business or service or whatever that you write your differentiation. So like Southwest Airlines is the only airlines that does not assign seats. So this is one way of saying it. Or you can say URead is the only product that does not require connectivity and enables reading of printed material. So like that, it's a simple way of making a statement. This is somewhat more complex way of making the statement, where you write it as for the ideal customer profile that you wrote, who, what do they need? They suffer or they need. The product is a solution description, what it is. That state the key benefit here. And unlike competing alternative or product differentiation, is how you can construct a statement. This is also the elevator pitch we talked about. So when you are talking about your technology brief and you are talking about specific applications, it is good to make these statements as bullet points. For customers who would like to cook food very quickly in the morning, uh, our pressure cooker is a good solution. So something like that. So, and it talks about this is an example here, right? And we also do branding, etc. when you make it a product where it is more appealing to the emotions of the people. So there you are saying the statement is about a private driver for you, something like that. So this is another example with just two statements here. I also talked about our company itself here, and this is another template that you can use. Okay, so in this we talk about customers tend to come to us when that's the difference here. In the previous one we talked about differentiation, competitive differentiation. Here we are talking about why should a customer come to us. This kind of a statement is more valuable with customers, so they know where they have to approach you, right, for your solution. So here we are saying the name of the product or company is a that works for your ideal customer profile to do something. So here it's all written in a company structure. It can also be for a technology or a product. Now, how do we test the value proposition of the product? So this is very, very important, in the market, because when you have a value proposition, the first step of testing it is to discover those customers who really have the pain. And would they acknowledge that the pain is relieved? That's the only way to test it. Okay. So you have to get out of your lab and work with these ideal customers. And that's the only way to begin even design and designing an end solution. Yeah. And before building the product, you should do all these validations. Now, again, going back to the technology transfer case, these are not directly applicable. The technology transfer case where your customer is an entrepreneur, you have to empathize with the entrepreneur's needs and what do they need to adopt your technology, which starts with their ability to reproduce it in their environment and help them go through that, but help them understand the application of it in the correct customer domain. So if the entrepreneur is say trying to serve customers of a certain category, it's important for you to understand those customers' context as well. So it's not enough that you understand the entrepreneur who is your direct customer. You have to also understand the end application of the technology that you created. And how do we know the quality of the value proposition? Okay, the quality of the value proposition is directly proportional to the value, the difference between the price and the cost, or the what is called the contribution margin of the business, right? So gross profit is the best indicator of the value, because as I said, value is an opinion. It is not a fact, right? It's a fact when they pay the price to you. You may say this is very valuable, but the other party may not value it so high. Right? So that's the important point. So it has to be aligned with the customer success. That's very important. Outcomes the customer cares about. So the customer purchase your product or your technology expecting certain things to happen. And if that's not happening, the adoption will not continue. You would have noticed so many apps that you download on your mobile phones. You start very enthusiastically and then you stop using it. Why? Because the value that has it appealed when the advertisement was going on is not really true when you actually use it. Okay, so then you may say, oh, this is not that useful, so I'm not going to use it anymore. You may uninstall the app, or you may buy a product but never use it. Okay, you may buy a product because it gives you clean air. Okay, and you may install it in your home, maybe use it for a week, and after that you somehow lose interest in that because you're not really perceiving the difference between a clean air and not so clean air. Okay, so you're not really able to feel the difference. So you feel, okay, I no longer use it. Yeah, so it's very important for support in such cases to illustrate and establish the value with the customer. Now let's have some questions. There's one question already you can see. Technology transfer or licensing from inventor and entrepreneurs. Relationship is very tricky. The inventor has no appreciation for what is required to build the product or finding a customer and the MVP. If it requires more experimentation, who does it? The inventor already has an IP, so want to move to another. How to make this relationship work? See, it's very, very important that the inventors are empathetic to the entrepreneurs, right? Most of the time, when they do technology transfer, if they are not giving the necessary handling like a baby, okay, it is unlikely to be successful. It is a collaborative effort. The minimum viable product, or beyond that, I always prefer to say production quality pilot, right? Minimum deployable product is what the startup has to build. Okay, that is the primary responsibility of the entrepreneur because it's their bread and butter. Okay, they will find the customers too, but you have to be a responsible co-founder with that entrepreneur to help them get the initial traction. That has to be part of your responsibility. And you do that to the best of your abilities or take your help from others who can support you. Making that
SN,
relationship work
yeah,
is very critical.
yeah. SN, let's just take a given situation. For example, there is an academic organization and an inventor who's a researcher in that organization, right? And there might be a tech transfer office, which is marketing the technology for that inventor, or the inventor is doing it themselves. There is a potential licensee who is licensing it, and then builds a product out of it, and that product he has to go and sell to a customer, right?
Correct.
End customer,
Correct.
right? So in such a situation, at first level, the inventor or the tech transfer office has to market the technology to the entrepreneur, saying that, look, this is the benefit that you are going to get out of it, right? And compared to other alternatives, that's what you described as value
Correct.
proposition, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And then, but at the same time, the entrepreneur is thinking, what is the value proposition I will convey to my customer,
Correct.
right, compared to other alternatives?
Correct.
And very often we find that the inventor or the technology transfer office has to communicate both to the entrepreneur, not
Correct.
only the value for him or her as an entrepreneur, but also what he can go and tell, he or she can go and tell their customers, right?
Right.
So it's a two-level process, right, where
Exactly.
you do both,
Yeah.
right? So this value proposition canvas that you showed, right? Um, how do we adapt it? Is it something we just do it twice in terms of two times?
No, see, the value proposition canvas is not what you use for that. So you basically use a tech brief here. The technology transfer to the entrepreneur is
No,
done
no,
through a tech
that's to
brief.
communicate, but in
Yeah.
order to figure out the value proposition, I will need the
Yeah.
canvas, right?
If you have to figure out the value proposition of each application, you create a value proposition canvas for each application. But what
Yeah,
you create as a technologist may
yeah,
not be what the entrepreneur will accept. So what happens is that value proposition canvas you made, you can transfer that to the entrepreneur. The entrepreneur will actually use it, and the
yeah,
entrepreneur may modify it, change it, and improve it. Yeah.
yeah,
So the value proposition canvas is made for each application. So to be very precise about this, we create a tech brief as a technologist or a technology transfer office, right? You create the tech brief, and that is what starts the meeting with the entrepreneur. Then the entrepreneur usually is talking about a specific application. They are not talking about all the technology. They are taking the technology for a specific market application that you recommended. So at that stage, you bring the value proposition canvas, right?
yeah.
And do at least a preliminary level of market opportunity navigation and value proposition canvas for that particular choice.
Yeah, so typical situation is the inventor is trying to sell the technology to a licensee, right? Sell in the sense of license it or assign it or whatever it is.
Right.
So he is trying to communicate, or she's trying to communicate what is the value proposition for them, right? That
Right.
communication is something which most tech marketing folks have to deal with, and that doesn't come out very well. And that's where I thought your value proposition canvas is very useful,
Yes.
right? Which is that people have to understand what benefits they get and then articulate that rather than just talk about the technology itself,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
Yeah. So
But
that
the
is
important thing
definitely,
to notice is the value proposition canvas we make for each application. And
yeah,
generally, in this conversation between a technologist and entrepreneur, the entrepreneur also has only one application in mind because
yeah.
they particularly would know a certain market or they're already operating in a certain market, right? So the value proposition canvas you need to prepare is only for that application.
Yeah. So let's just take an example and you just illustrate it for us. For example, say there's a process technology, say lab like NCL has come up with A plus B goes to C.
Hmm.
Okay. Now the C is is the end result of the technology.
Right.
Now the entrepreneur has to manufacture C, but he has to go back to his customers and say why his C is better,
Correct.
right? And
Correct.
his C may be better because it's cheaper, or it might be that it is sustainably made, low carbon emissions, whatever it is that he wants to present
Correct.
to his customers eventually, right?
Correct. Correct.
So, what will be the pitch of the inventor to the to this entrepreneur?
Yeah.
How
So
should
let's
it be
take the same
structured?
example of A plus B equals C. I'll just
Yeah,
add a nuance saying that C is also, let's say, is a material. It's
yeah,
some material,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So that material has certain properties. The properties
yeah,
are like lightweight, strong, whatever, right?
yeah,
Now, the person interested in the technology, in the first conversation on the technology brief, the technology brief is what is bringing the buyer first, the entrepreneur, to the technology transfer office, right?
yeah,
So they are operating in a certain market. Let's say they are automotive component suppliers or they are consumer product makers. I'm taking a simple example of some kind of plastic.
yeah,
Yeah. So now, depending on you have to understand first what the entrepreneur is doing. That's very important. Okay. And then understand the entrepreneur's customer and create a value proposition canvas for that.
yeah. But you
That's the
see,
right way to do it.
most licensing professionals don't upfront know their customers, right?
Correct.
They are
Correct.
guessing who that
Correct.
customer could be. So they
Correct.
have to put a range of I suppose they have to keep a range of customers in mind and then say, this is the value for you,
Correct. Exactly. So
right? Hmm?
that step is done by Market Opportunity Navigator, which I will cover in the next session. Okay. So Market Opportunity Navigator will tell you all the possible applications. Okay.
Yeah.
Out of that, we may shortlist a few, saying these are the most lucrative and least challenging. Right. So
Okay.
let's say there are 4 applications. So you create a preliminary value proposition canvas for those and keep it ready. But be
Yeah.
willing to change it with the entrepreneur.
Yeah. Mugdha has put up a feedback form. I'll request people to fill that in as well, right? So that we have some inputs for both the program and the speakers as well. So request you to please fill that up as well. Any other questions people would like to ask, please put it in the chat box. Uh, so this is something which so while it's happening, SN, I just thought this concept of value proposition has not been used as much. At least the canvas has not been used as much in the literature, in tech transfer at least. People
Yeah.
use it in the startup world, but not as much in the tech transfer profession per se. So
Yes.
that's one thing which comes out as quite important as well,
Right.
right?
In fact, it is a
Uh,
very powerful tool. Even if you don't understand completely,
yeah,
your assumptions come out. In fact, that's the most important point here. So your hypothesis may be wrong. You may think that this plastic with these properties can apply to automotive. But an
yeah,
automotive entrepreneur may say, no, that doesn't work. When this is why it doesn't work. Okay. So
yeah,
that way you also improve your applicability part.
yeah. Actually, the video you had was actually quite interesting as well. I wish we could have played it, but it's because people as inventors tend to focus on features, not on benefits, right?
Correct. Exactly.
Whereas the entrepreneur or the buyer wants to know benefits. What's the value? They're
Yeah.
not interested. Okay, it's a nanotech thing, or you throw some jargon, or you say this is smaller, or so. It doesn't matter to them. They will want to know what benefit it translates to, right?
Right.
So you want to illustrate it with an example, please, in terms of one. I think
No,
you've
then
shown
the
it with
best thing
some
to do
example.
is to play the video itself. There cannot be any better
Okay.
example than that.
Yeah,
So,
but have you shared with sound ticked? Just
yeah,
check,
I
okay?
believe so. Let's see.
Yeah, okay.
Hey, I've got a great
Is it sound is coming?
Yeah, it sound is good. Yeah, please go ahead. This is an inventor who's describing value proposition. Somebody's asking them for what is the technology about, and this inventor, who is a typical scientist, is describing it. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and here the context is fundraising and investment. Okay.
Yeah,
But this is no different in the case of technology transfers also, right?
Yeah.
you should be able to explain to your potential entrepreneurs who are trying to license this or businesses that are trying to license this.
Hey, I've got a great idea for a business.
That's exciting. Tell me about it.
I've developed a chemical isomer that links to volatile organic compounds causing carbon bonds to rupture and wraps them in a nanotube coating.
Huh. That's a little confusing. Can you dumb it down for me?
Sure. What I do is I take a proprietary isomer that I developed with a picric acid wash that hollows out the carbon bonds and replaces them with a nanotube wrapping.
Okay, so I guess it's pretty technical.
Oh yeah. I've been working on this isomer for 9 years.
So what's the business idea?
To sell it,
To who?
everybody will want one,
What for?
so they can wrap their volatile organic compounds in carbon nanotubes.
I think you might need a target customer. I don't think I need to wrap my compounds in your nanotube.
Well, maybe not you.
So, for people who buy it, what's the value you are providing them?
I've developed a chemical isomer that links to volatile organic compounds causing carbon bonds to rupture and wraps them in a nanotube coating.
You've said that already. This is getting annoying. Why should anyone care about your isomer?
I spent 9 years on this.
I know that. Okay, pretend I'm an investor. How can I make money off your product?
By selling it.
You're a smart guy, but try not to think like a scientist. Think like a business person.
Okay. Value chain. Term sheet.
I have to go now and answer that.
That's not your phone.
I know.
Okay. So that
See,
is, oh,
even this appears to be so jovial. It's so real. I've experienced many times, and
yeah.
technology struggling like this.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's quite important that the people articulate the benefits, and that benefits is what doesn't come out as well, right?
Correct.
So there's a question on the chat box. What common from Mahesh Sitagiri, what common red flags indicate that a value proposition is not working in the market?
Yeah. So in fact, it is covered already. I'll just take you to the slide. Maybe we went very fast over it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do we know the quality of value proposition of the solution? See, the most important thing is the customer continuing to use your product at the end of the day? Because as we saw the JTBD, job to be done, and we use the term customer success to indicate this. Customer success is customer is successfully using it for a long time. So if that is not happening, customer adoption is becoming difficult. That is a good indicator. Now, how do we do this? How do we really check that, is it working or not? It's in practical terms. So when you're trying to talk to customers, one thing you should know is more than 50% of customers are late adopters. They are customers who are not going to just jump at a new solution. So they may say, oh, skeptical answers, they may say. That's not necessarily means that your value proposition is bad. It simply means that these individuals are not early adopters. So in the initial communication, try to figure out who are those people who are enthusiastically willing to work with you. That's very important. And when I use the word enthusiastically willing to work with you, it means they are even willing to co-develop the solution with you. That's what I call the proto customers. They're the best cases because I have the technology, I have done it in the lab. Now I want to make an industrial solution out of it. And someone else says, yeah, I will put my team and invest extra effort to take it to the market. That kind of initial customers we'll have to find first, right? And then those people have to find their early adopters, okay? And those early adopters have to continue using the product, which will help you show that as an example to the other people who are skeptical to accept it. So that is typically how the sequence goes. It takes about 1 to 2 years. That's the typical time it takes for most products. Products like ChatGPT are exceptions, where the adoption just ramped up in a week or things like that.
Yeah.
So those are generally exceptions.
So, SN, you had shown that video. Another thing I just wanted to point out is that many inventors or tech transfer offices tend to put out the papers or the patents and expect that people will understand the benefits from that, right?
Correct.
A publication describes, say, mechanisms, a little bit of data and so on, but doesn't necessarily discuss value for customers,
Correct.
right? Similarly, the patent may not also do it,
Yeah.
right?
Patents are the least readable products.
Yeah. So both of these don't constitute, is not the same as a technology brief, and technology brief has to focus on value.
Yeah.
And regarding, this gentleman talking about 7 years or whatever it is on the video, another common thing is, oh yeah, it's internationally peer reviewed and the best journal has accepted it, so it must be valuable. Well, that is not true either, right?
Yeah.
So that's something which inventors and tech transfer professionals will have to
totally
keep
agree.
in mind. Yeah, they will need to talk only about benefits and value propositions, right?
Correct.
Okay. So I think we should close on that note. We're at about 5:12, right?
Yeah.
So
And also I have just shown the technology brief
yeah,
summary here again. So
Yeah.
try to avoid jargons. That's very, very important. And focus on the customer and its use and what benefits they will get.
great. Thank you so much, SN. I think your analysis of value proposition is fantastic. So thank you very much for sharing that with us. Yeah. Over
Thank
to
you
you,
so
Thank you for the
Mugdha.
opportunity, and thank
Yeah,
you all
yeah.
participants. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Over to Mugdha.
I am willing to stay back if anybody has to discuss anything.
Yeah, so before we
Otherwise, you
close,
can
I
drop.
just want to indicate the next topic, which is Market Opportunities Navigator, as SN has already pointed out, where you would focus on identifying markets for technology ideas using the tool. So that's happening on 9th of December, same time at 4 o'clock. Please do join us for that session also. Thank you, SN. And in case there are any questions, we will also reach out to you separately over email.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.